Week 3, The Morlocks Countermeasure. Chapter 1, A Temporal Trap. Time was no longer a predictable force. It bent, flickered, and pulsed unnaturally, as if struggling against an unseen hand trying to reshape its flow. The Morlocks had planned for this. They had foreseen Hermes' arrival, the intervention of the gods, the desperate efforts of Wells, Holmes, and Watson. They had anticipated the resistance. And they had prepared their countermeasure. The device that warps time. Deep within the shadows of London's distortion, two Morlocks worked in tandem, their unnatural forms crouched over a strange mechanism. It pulsed, an eerie, shifting construct of future technology merged with something even more sinister. It was not merely a machine. It was a time distorter. They had salvaged it from the fragments of time itself, assembling components stolen from eras yet to come. Wells would have recognized its parts, pieces of distant futures, remnants of civilizations long past, theories that had never been invented yet somehow existed here. But the Morlocks understood its purpose far better than any human ever could. With a single activation, history would bend to their will. They would no longer be intruders in 1900. They would belong to history itself, woven into the timeline, a force that had always existed, unseen yet unbreakable. Holmes and Watson uncover the plan. Holmes was restless. Something in London felt different, not just wrong, but deliberate. The clues had aligned in unsettling ways, objects appearing before their invention, conversations repeating as if they had already happened, the unexplained flicker of lantern light, as though moments were being rewritten in real time. Watson followed closely, his instincts sharp. "It's as if the past and future are blending," Watson murmured, watching Holmes scan the city streets. "Nothing feels stable anymore." Holmes narrowed his gaze. "Because time has been altered in ways we were not meant to understand." They had suspected the Morlocks were changing history, but now they realized it was more than mere interference. The Morlocks were trying to rewrite reality itself. And if they succeeded, Holmes, Watson, and everyone else would lose their place in time entirely. The first disruption. Then it happened. The shift was subtle at first. Watson's footsteps echoed twice, though he had only walked once. A stray newspaper fluttered in the wind, its headline suddenly rewriting itself before their eyes. A passerby froze, his mouth moving in speech that had already been spoken moments before. Watson gasped, "Holmes!" But before he could finish, time fractured. A wave rippled through the streets. Buildings flickered. People blinked out of existence for mere seconds before returning. A distortion swept across Baker Street, stretching the very fabric of reality. And then, far in the distance, the Morlocks activated their device. Cliffhanger, reality begins to break. Holmes grabbed Watson's arm, anchoring them both as time twisted violently. The Morlocks' plan had worked. The battle for history had begun. Chapter 2, Holmes's Deduction. The world was unraveling, and Holmes could see it. Not in the way a mere man observes a broken clock or a fractured mirror, but in patterns, in shifts so subtle they would elude even the keenest of minds. Watson had felt it in fleeting moments. Wells had studied it with scientific dread, but Holmes, he understood it. Because it was a puzzle. And puzzles had solutions. The evidence of a fractured reality. Holmes stood motionless in the heart of London's disruption, his mind racing through every anomaly, every inconsistency, every impossible occurrence that had taken place over the last 2 days. The duplicate footsteps, the flickering lamplight, the changing headlines. The sudden rewriting of past events as though history itself were a living, shifting entity rather than something fixed. Watson observed his friend in silence, knowing better than to disturb him when he fell into his deepest deductions. Then Holmes spoke. "Time is not merely shifting, it is rewriting itself," he said, his voice sharp, precise, unwavering. "Each anomaly is not a mistake. It is a correction, a deliberate act." Watson stiffened. "Correction, but what—" Holmes turned, his gaze piercing. "The Morlocks do not merely seek passage through time. They seek permanence, They are altering history so that they were always meant to exist in it. Watson's breath caught. That was the truth. If the Morlocks succeeded, they would no longer be intruders in 1900. They would become part of the very foundation of history itself, a species never recorded, never discovered, but always present, weaving themselves into the world's timeline as if they had always been meant to exist. And that, Holmes realized, was far more dangerous than any mere invasion. The impossible puzzle. For the first time in many years, Holmes felt something close to uncertainty. This was no ordinary investigation. This was not logic alone. It was something beyond even his brilliant mind. And yet, the pieces were there. He could see the patterns forming. The Morlocks were not merely shifting history. They were erasing and rewriting events. Objects, people, and places were changing, vanishing, reappearing, not randomly, but in a structured way, as if time itself were adjusting to fit their presence. Nemo was involved, not just as an opportunist, but as someone who understood time far better than any other mortal. Holmes took a slow breath, steadying himself. "We must act before the distortion becomes permanent," he said, "before history reshapes itself entirely." Cliffhanger, the moment of decision. Then, the ground beneath them shifted. It was not an earthquake, it was something else. The streets flickered. Buildings twisted, stretching and compressing as if unsure of their own existence. And then, from the shadows, the Morlocks emerged. Not hiding, not running. Waiting, watching, knowing. Time was their domain now. And Holmes had mere moments before it was too late. Chapter 3. Intervention by the Gods. Kronos stood at the edge of time itself, his gaze piercing through the fractured threads of reality. He had stabilized countless eras, guiding history with unseen hands, ensuring events unfolded as they were meant to. But now, something resisted him. It was no mere paradox, no accidental disturbance. It was Nemo. Kronos' attempts to mend time. The streets of London shuddered beneath the weight of history breaking apart. Time, stretched to its limits, fought against Kronos' will. The ancient god reached into the fracture, weaving moments back into place, restoring the flow. Yet each attempt was blocked, twisted against his efforts by an unseen force. Holmes, Watson, Wells, and Hermes watched in tense silence as Kronos struggled. Then a voice rang through the distortion, calm, deliberate, defiant. "Noble attempt," Nemo said. Nemo's defiance. From the mist, Nemo stepped forward, not as a man lost to time, but as a man who had mastered it. "You see time as a force to be restored," Nemo continued, his eyes gleaming. "I see it as a force to be controlled." Kronos narrowed his gaze. "You tread where no mortal should walk." Nemo smiled, not with arrogance, but with certainty. "I have seen what lies beyond history. I have walked Atlantis, touched the gates of the unseen, and glimpsed what even the gods dare not speak of. Time is not broken, it is awakening." Wells stepped forward, fury in his voice. "You cannot reshape the past as you see fit. History is not a tool to be wielded." Nemo turned to Wells, his expression unreadable. "Isn't that exactly what you have done?" Wells froze. The gods watched, sensing the weight of Nemo's knowledge. He had gone beyond Atlantis, beyond mortal understanding. He did not seek power. He sought something else, something only he could see, something hidden within the depths of time itself. And that, Kronos realized, was why the timeline refused to mend. Nemo was not merely a disturbance. He was an anchor, a force within time itself. Cliffhanger. The war for time begins. Kronos stepped forward, his form shimmering between the past and future. "Nemo," he said, his voice carrying the weight of eternity, "if you will not step aside, then you will face the gods themselves." The air trembled. The battle for time had begun.